Hey guys, it's Day here. Today we are back for the SMITE Birthday 5.5 tier list. We have a new god to rank. We have a lot of things that are probably going to change, especially since SPL has just happened. We can see a lot more strategies that are coming through and things that are developing within the scene. However, this is not just an SPL tier list. This is rather more of a ranked and casuals tier list because I feel like that affects more people, right? I will take into consideration some SPL aspects, but mostly I would be ranked in casuals. And the metas for these two are very different right now, so let's begin. Achilles, S tier. He is broken. There is no other way to put it. He is one of the best junglers in the game, one of the best solo laners in the game, and he can also play support. So, 3 roles, so there's flex picks options there. His capability to basically just bully out opponents with his long range and his constant poke is really astounding. Not to mention his CC is pretty good with his 1, decent stun. His healing is also decent with his 2. He really just has everything that you want. Not to mention that XQ, which makes trading with him a lot harder, because once you reach that 30% threshold, or it might be 35% threshold, you basically have already lost, unless he's bad and misses somehow. So, yeah, Achilles is really strong, really one of the priority bans right now in ranked. Agni, you see, Agni's moving up quite a bit, actually, in my opinion, especially in ranked. He's very highly prioritized, one of the top few mages when the top mages like Thoth and Habois are banned out. He is the next go-to pick, and not too surprised by that, but at the same time, it's kind of a shift from what he's usually the A tier god in the A tier. Agni in the A tier is what everyone's used to saying, but now he's in the S- tier, and that's just because of his great poke. He's very safe, and especially against assassins, he's very safe because of his noxious fumes into his flame wave dash or flame dash. It's really good to peel off assassins, and that just makes him really hard to kill for assassins. Not to mention his ultimate makes him really undesirable to all-in commit, because if you all-in commit on a Agni that's just spamming ultimate on himself, you're going to take a lot of damage and might die yourself. I might move Achilles a little bit higher up. Yeah, I think that'll be better. Yeah. Next up is Ama Zenkob. I don't think he's changed too much. He's still an alright character. Lack of mobility still hurts him, but he does have clear. I don't know. I don't have much. Like, I haven't seen much AMC, but from what I can tell, he just gets camped out really hard and just kind of loses. If he does get ahead, though, that really puts him in a favorable position, as he's able to really just out-damage any other hunter because of that ultimate, and how quickly, if you are accurate with it, how quickly he comes back off of cooldown. This allows him to take really good 1v1 trades really easily, but hunters aren't really the focal point of just the game anymore, so there's that to take into consideration, and also they're easier to gank because they're lower level than before. Junglers are also putting a lot of pressure on duo, so not appreciated by AMC at all. So all in all, these factors all just add up to put him in an A- god. Not that, I mean, he can work, but he kind of needs a lot of peel. Next is Apwash. Apwash is bad. The same thing with AMC, except since he's in a more vital role, if he does get shut down this hard, it hurts the team more, and because of that, he's in B tier. Not to mention that what he provides, which is damage and a little bit of utility, is heavily outmatched by many other mages right now. For example, Agni, like, just does everything that he does, burst, poke, range, like, CC, everything better besides self-healing, and there are other gods that can self-heal and just, like, can also benefit from lifesteal, which is pretty potent right now as well. So you don't even need self-healing. And there's just a lot of aspects of Apwash that make him undesirable. Really, the main one is the lack of mobility really hurts him, especially when assassins are able to really run the game. If you're an Apwash, you're not going to have a fun time. Amaterasu! She's a god in A+ in my opinion. Her team fight is phenomenal. Her laning phase is less than phenomenal. That is, unless you're playing her in the support role. I think that Amaterasu is going to transition from a solo laner to support. Especially since we're seeing more guardians in the solo lane. It's kind of hard for Ama to really lose lane in that, but she can't really win lane either. And guardians also just do more in team fights, so you know, there's that. But Ama early game does more than guardians, which is interesting, which is why I think we might see her more in the support, especially because the ultimate's only on a 75-second cooldown as opposed to a Gebstone, which is on a 90-second cooldown. Sylvanas Wrath of Terra on a 90-second cooldown. You know, just these big support ults, which are all on 90-second cooldowns. Amaterasu has a slight edge over them because of her ultimate. Not to mention her passive, as well as her one, both provide auras for the team that increase damage or movement speed if it's the one, and give her a self-heal. She's got a lot of utility that I think should not be underestimated currently. I just don't think that the best role for her is in the solo lane, but rather in the support. Next is on her. Excuse me. On her is A tier in my opinion. He's got the good level 1 trade. He's got the good like trading potential. His ult being on a 75-second cooldown is really vital for his success, as it allows him to be CC immune for the full duration. I don't know why I just couldn't speak there, but yeah, you're able to be CC immune for the full duration, and because of that, it's basically a 75-second beads. You do have to continue channeling that ability though, so there's that to consider. All in all, a relatively safe hunter with really good aggression. It's just that some other hunters, especially ability-based hunters like Ullr and Hachiman, just do more than he does, and that's why he's only in A tier. Next up is Anubis. Anubis is A-. This is mainly due to Anubis' lack of mobility. Similar to Apwash, but however, unlike Apwash, Anubis also has some CC, some self-peel in that sense. He's also kind of less easy to dive when it comes to playing an assassin. If you're an assassin and you try to dive an Anubis and he hits the wraps on you pre-level 12, and you just you happen to have blink instead of beads, you're basically dead. If he's level 5, you're level 5, you blink in on him, and he just wraps you 3 ult, you're kind of just, you know, you just got like, you got dumpstered on, and you really can't do anything there. So Anubis has that really potent, what's it called? Really potent turnaround capability, something that Apwash doesn't have, and that's why I had given the slight edge in that sense. They're both immobile, however, so if the assassin is persistent and is capable of catching him off guard, it's kind of GG for him. Also, he doesn't do much from behind. Next is Ao Kuang. He recently did get a nerf. I think he might be A+. Still, depends on how things settle down more. But he does have the burst still. He also has the execute. Certain aspects of his kit just don't function as well anymore. But besides that, I think he's still a pretty solid mage jungle. And just is able to really... If he gets one kill, especially in ranked, I think he's a lot better in ranked than in like SBL level play, because in ranked, if you get that one kill, you can start you can start snowballing really hard, and it's a lot harder to counter snowball in ranked than it is in, say, an SPL game or something like that. Next is Aphrodite. Bad, but yeah, just bad. Like, there's no reason to pick her over Hell. That's first thing that I always think of. Second thing is, like, she doesn't have a role that she plays well or better than any other character in that role. In solo lane, she gets heavily dumpstered on by Kerberos in particular. That's a solo lane pick that I haven't seen, but I haven't expected to see, but is getting picked up a lot and is heavily prioritized. A lot heavier than expected. Also just gets dumpstered by many like Guardian solos. Solobek is a character. Kukulkan is a character. These characters all have anti-heal built into their kicks, and it's really hard as an Afro player to get any healing off to begin with. Not to mention that her early game is literally one of the worst for mages. I think Apwash might have a worse early game, and she's joining him there. Her utility only comes online in the 20-minute mark, And if you're only coming online at the 20-minute mark, no matter what role you're playing, you're going to lose. So it's really hard to make Afro work, but if she does, she can be pretty potent. So, like, I think that's a pointer for all the gods. They can all be very potent. It's just like certain gods take less effort to be that potent. Apollo, I don't know, man. These new changes, they're interesting, man. They're interesting. Like, on the one hand, Silver Branch, Ichabod, Aussie, all these items that Apollo kind of likes got buffed. But on the other hand, Midgardian Male literally, like, shoves him 8 years down the tier list probably, because Midgardian Male is really strong right now. So I'll put him in A+, because he still has that global presence, and his boxing potential is still really good. In ranked, you probably don't have to worry about Midgardian as much as in, like, an SPL game, because in SPL games, Hunters are building defensive with, like, a defensive Magi's Cloak, or even a Midgardian to box, but this is ranked, so I'm not expecting that unless in the highest level of play. So, yeah, I think that Apollo does have, like, capabilities. His passive is one of the few passives that can contest with one of the best, quote-unquote hunters in the game, Soul. His passive is the only one similar to hers, except Soul's is like miles better, but he can't quote-unquote compete with her because of that. His global pressure with his ultimate is always nice. He's got an instant mez, makes him safe. He's a very safe god. And those are pretty good in duo right now, because like you're not doing much else than being safe, because like junglers like to put a lot of pressure in duo or mid, so there's that. Arachne's in B tier, and the main reason for that is Midgardian buffs really shut her down. Like, it's really hard for Arachne now to, like, even be effective. In lower levels of play, she probably still will be effective, and for those who do not know, Midgardian got buffed recently, making it not RNG, so that attack speed slow and movement speed slow are both present no matter what, which is pretty potent. I might be blowing it up too much. I might be overhyping the item, but I think it's one of the best items in the game right now because of it, especially against basic attack gods. Specifically Arachne, like, I mean, that's the point of conversation right now. Arachne gets hard countered by it, because, like, her stun relies on getting 3 basics off, and it's harder to get 3 basics off, because for each basic you hit, your basic attack speed is slowed, and if you don't have the web out preemptively, you're also getting slowed, so you're not even gonna have enough range to get that 3rd basic off. So that just gives a lot of leeway, especially if you're trying to collapse onto a solo laner and like a support. It's really hard for that. But like, you would think that it doesn't affect her as much, but like, it does really affect her a lot, because like that eliminates 2 targets completely from being targeted at all by Arachne, leaving the squishies. And supports are really, and she still has the struggle of being really susceptible to CC and being really susceptible to shut down if she doesn't have her ultimate. So there's that to take into consideration. Next is Ares. I think he's bad. More people are getting Magi's Cloak now, like no more than before, because Dodgy is so good. And that hurts Achilles a lot, because he's supposed to be a beads baiter, but when you're only baiting in a Magi's Cloak, that's not nearly as beneficial. Another thing about Ares is his lane clear is straight buns. Like, it is the worst Guardian lane clear, even worse than Terra, which is surprising. The only way he wins lane is through aggression, but Bacchus just does that better. And the thing is, dual lane aggression is really useful. Like, dual lane, being able to win the early clear in duo is super useful, because you can get the buff rotation. And if you're not winning that early rotation if you're not winning that early clear and getting that early buff rotation, what you want to be doing is playing for the late game. That certain supports can do. Ares has okay late game, but he's all about that mid game, and he can't get to mid game when he's like 2 levels behind and doesn't do nearly enough damage to be relevant. And since he's so damage focused as a support, he really struggles, because supports are just inherently behind, excuse me. But it's even harder because his lane clear is so bad. Next up is Artemis. Artemis, I think, has very similar issues that AMC has currently. A Items did get buffed. Specifically, I'm looking at that tier 1 Devos buff. I think that's pretty interesting. I think that that will help Devos hunters out a bit. Aussie buff Might Effector, Silver Branch Might Effector. All these buffs Might Effector, but like she has the same issue as AMC does, but on a lesser scale because she does have a CC immune ult as well as a stun on that CC immune ult. I think her damage is lacking compared to AMC, but she does make up with that with the CC as well as the poke. Don't underestimate the poke that her what's it called? The 3 gives. It's pretty powerful. It's pretty potent, and it's on a relatively short cooldown, so she can spam that quite easily. The only issue there being that it costs a lot of mana. Well, for at least Artemis it does, and because of that, it's kind of hard to spam. But other than that, it's pretty potent. Next up is Ardia, literally the best Guardian in the game right now. She can be played in multiple roles. Same with Achilles, and also just it's really disgusting when it comes to countering assassins, like really good at that because of her cripple field, as well as her stun, as well as her root, as well as her slow. You know, she's got a lot that just counters assassins, and because of that, she's so potent. Not to mention the fact that she hard counters Serket because of her 2, and she soft counters many other assassins, as well as just any god with mobility. So she just really shrugs those characters off. Her level 2 power spike and her like pre-level 5 power spikes are so strong compared to any other Guardian in the game. It's really hard to fight into her pre-level 5. And that allows her to get those buff camps that I was talking about earlier. And that also allows her to establish a lot of lane dominance, which is really beneficial, especially in dual lane. Dual lane is all about lane dominance. Or if you're not going for lane dominance, you're playing for the late game. There's no either or option. Only a few gods can make it out of dual lane without getting lane dominance. One of those, spoiler alert, is being Geb, which is also relatively high tier, but for other reasons. Next up is Athena. Athena's good because she's got that global mobility, and I don't think anything can really take that away from her. Like, she's one of the few Guardians with global effects besides Terra, so she's very highly revered because of that. Not to mention her 2-second taunt, you know, like one of the best setups in the game. Yeah, I think she's going to be pretty high tier because of that. So she's going to go in S-. Next up is a Wheelish. Wheelish is, I think she's A+. I think that I finally accepted that a Wheelish is a little bit good, just a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean she's pretty good because, especially in ranked, maybe not as much in SPL, but especially in ranked, since good junglers now more than ever have a large effect on the game, and as a jungler, you really want to prioritize early game. Wheelish has early game, like a good amount of it. Her Feather Step does a lot of damage. She has a decent amount of CC and Feather Step plus 3 plus ult. All these abilities do a lot of damage too. Her mobility around the map with Suku is really good. She just has a lot of things that junglers desire, and she's able to control the early game really well. And she's also a very snowbally god, and in ranked, it's really hard to counter snowball, at least in lower levels. In higher levels, it gets easier. Like, as you go up, it gets easier and easier. But she kind of stomps in lower levels if you play her correctly. Next is Bacchus. Bacchus is better Ares, but you will... He's in between A and A-. Like, that's where I'd put him. But I think that Bacchus is better Ares. But he's also not that great. Like, I don't think I'd ever pick a Bacchus over like a Sylvanas or a Sobek or Athena or Geb or Ganesh. You know, there's a lot of supports right now that are just kind of better than him. Like, he provides that early game aggression, but like I said with Ares, he doesn't have that early game clear. He has more than Ares for sure, but like, he doesn't have that early game clear, and he's also not looking to be like necessarily a late game monster. So like, what you're looking for in duo is either clear or late game monster, and he brings neither of that. He brings aggression, which is cool, but you can't aggress when you don't have a purple buff and you're like 2 levels behind. So there's that to take into consideration. Next is Bakasur. You know, I liked Baka. I thought he was going to come back, but then they had to hit him with that powerful Midgardian buff, and now he's basically bottom tier. This god is not going to be good anymore. He can farm. That's cool, dog. He can farm, but Midgardian male literally hard counters him. Excuse me. Midgardian male literally hard counters him. Not only can he not like only hit the squishies like a Raccoon can because of his cone AoE basic attack, so that supports, as long as they stand near him, will also give the effect of Midgardian. But Midgardian's effect, I forgot to mention, also stacks with Witchblade, which also got buffed. Bak is going to the trash bin. Bakasur, more like basura. That means trash in Spanish, and that's where he's going to go. That's where he's going to end up because of this Midgardian buff. Bastet. Pretty good. Like, she's got the burst. She's very similar to Wheelish, except with less CC, more damage. Her early game is phenomenal with the cats, with the pounce, with the 2, the 3, the razor whip, the, you know, just Bastet's kit just does a lot of damage, you know? Like, when you get leaped on by Bastet, you can basically say goodbye if you're a mage. You're like, peace out, boys. See you on the gray screen. I'm gone. Late game, she struggles a little bit more because her cats don't do as much, but her 1, 2, 3, she's still able to poke really nicely because of her 1's ability to go back to where she started. And I think that's really good for her. I think that she's good right now. Certain assassins, just do what she does better. Next is Bologna. Bologna kind of fallen off due to Death's Toll not being in the game, but she's still a monster. Like, she's on the verge of being like she's in between S- and A+. She's really good in certain senses. Midgardian buff will hurt her as well. I mean, you're going to see a lot. You're going to see me mention Midgardian a lot. I think that this item has been, like, one of the best now. But, hey, whatever. Anyway, Bologna kind of doesn't have the best time against Midgardian. Doesn't have the worst time either. She herself can build it, which is quite nice. Her soloing capabilities, it's always going to be there. It's Bologna. She's never going to be bad. It's just, like, she's not the best right now. Like, you know, you got Achilles up here, so it's hard to compete with those. Once back in the olden days, maybe she could have. Next is Cabrakan. A- still, in my opinion. Like, what, you're going to play him in solo, but you could play Sobek, you could play Cerberus, you can play a lot of gods, solo gods there. Jing Chen, you know, you can play a lot of guardians there. I don't know why you'd play Cabrakan, because, like, the thing that Cabrakan brings is, like, magical warrior. Like, he's the most aggressive of the guardian solos, but the issue is, like, all the high tiers just kind of don't care. Like, Achilles just doesn't care. Especially Achilles. Achilles really just stuns him out of his tremors, and what are you going to do now? You're going to sit there, watch me clear wave Kokolin. I mean, he doesn't have a way to interrupt, but his dot damage on his 2 is going to be pretty monumental over time. And also, another thing to take into consideration is that the dot damage from his tremors gets reduced by Warrior's Blessing. So if you build Warrior's Blessing into a Cabrakan, his damage, like the dot damage over time, doesn't exist as much. So there's that to take into consideration. In the support role, he's alright. I think there's better guardians. He does have clear. He does have aggression. But, like, I think there's just better guardians right now, so. Next is Camazotz. I think I underrated Camazotz a bit. Just a bit, you know. I think that the pros overvalue him. In my opinion, Thanatos is still better than Camazotz. But I can understand why he's highly valued. But I'm not a pro, so I guess I shouldn't be talking. I think that he does have a lot of damage. He also does have a lot of healing. His ult is really nice. He lacks CC, though. I think Thanatos brings more CC to the table than he does. He also lacks an ability to be effective from behind. Like, from behind, we really don't see too much from him. Like, he can vampire bats you, but, like, it's going to tickle you, right, from behind. Because he's really damage-oriented, and that's the thing with most assassins. When you're behind, you don't do as much, but Thanatos, in my opinion, just fills that role better, because even from behind, he has that 40% execute threshold. So, like, you got to be afraid at all times. But I guess as most pros are proving, it's hard to be behind when you're in jungle, so I guess there's that. Kerberos, I think another god I underrated last time. I think that in support he's more viable than I thought he would be. The buffs really did make him that good. Solo lane, I think that's his role where he shines, and I think he's really good at that. His early game aggression, level like 3-ish, is pretty good. His one's damage is absurd if you land it. If you're accurate, I think he's better in higher levels of play than in lower levels, that's for sure. Because you require a lot of accuracy to hit that one, like at least 2 or 3 ticks of that one, so that it does so much damage. I think that because of that, he's very highly valued in higher levels of play. I don't know if he's going to be that highly valued in lower levels of play, just simply because it's hard and like difficult potency, like I said before with other gods, is not valued as highly as easy potency. Like you want the gods that don't take a lot of effort to be potent, or like don't take a lot of planning and thinking to be potent. And I think that Cerberus requires a little bit of that, a little bit of mechanical skill. But if you get over that, I think he's potent in both solo and support. Next is Cernunnos. I don't know. I think Cernunnos has a decent matchup into Soul because of his 1 and his ability to do more basic attack damage through that. I don't know how like beneficial that is for a Soul matchup. I don't play ADC that often, so like it's hard for me to determine. I just know that Soul is like the best ADC right now, and I think Cernunnos has like a slight way of competing. I'm not saying that he beats her by any stretch of the imagination. I think Soul beats literally every hunter in the game, but I think that Cernunnos has a way to fight back, specifically because of the ultimate and the 1, and that's why I'm putting him in A+. Next is Chalk. Chalk is also like not good. We're like not that good. Like he's better than B tier, but like not that good because like he's just discount Hercules, and I would always rather have a Hercules than a Chalk, like at all stages of the game. Because Hercules provides more CC, in my opinion, has a better heal, and also just has more damage. So I don't know why you would ever pick Chalk when Hercules is sitting right there. Maybe for the attack speed slow, but I don't think that alone warrants him to be picked. Next is Chang'e. She's an intriguing feller. I'm going to put her in A tier. She's got some things that benefit her, like short cooldowns, allowing her to proc more Mage's Blessings, stacks. Her clear is, like, mediocre. From ahead, she does decently well. From behind, she does less well, but she's still utility, so there's that. But I think mages, now more than ever, have been expected to carry and do a lot of, like, big damage. And Chang'e, she does a lot of, like, pokey damage. And over time, whittles you down until you're dead. And you're just sitting there like, okay. Her main burst comes from her ultimate, and I think it's one of the better ultimates in the game, so she has that going for her. Her 2 is also really good. Her Jade Rabbit allows her to farm pretty efficiently in jungle, maybe. So I haven't seen a lot of Chang'e season 5, not gonna lie, and I just don't think that she's that viable, or like really viable, like as some other mages are currently. But she's still okay. She can play her. My man Chiron Jungle, I think Chiron Jungle is still underrated. I think Chiron Jungle needs to be played, but until it gets played, he's going to be an A tier. I'm waiting for actual evidence that Chiron Jungle works. Until that evidence occurs, I'm going to have to put him in A tier. I think this god's underrated. He can play multiple roles. I'm the jungle advocate. A lot of people probably will disagree with me. I'm fine with that. It's half meme, half real. Like, I'm half serious about it. Like, I actually kind of believe that he can play jungle well. He can play ADC to a decent extent. Like, he can win lane, kind of. Like, not as good as Ullr, so... Like, when it comes to ability-based hunters, Ullr is, like, the prime example. When it comes to mid laning, that might be where he goes. Because, especially now more than ever, people are running magical ADCs, specifically Soul. And running... that physical hunter in middle allows you to siege up really well, and sieging is pretty hard this season, so having a god that can, like having multiple gods that can siege up might be fairly useful. Also, Chiron's ability to siege is really nice because of his long range ultimate. Picks him off from a distance, baby. Chronos. I think Chronos is here. I think Chronos is like pretty good. Like, he has that ultimate to keep him safe. Like, I mean, sure, he doesn't have an escape, but his 2 is basically 1 because of how much movement speed it gives. He's got a good stun. His 1 is on a short cooldown. It's a small area of effect, but it's a short cooldown, so it doesn't really matter. He's got good boxing potential, not nearly as much as Soul, but good enough. I think he can be played in both mid and ADC. I feel as though he performs better in ADC than in mid, but I can always be proven wrong. But I think Kronos is alright. I think Kronos can be an A+ god. Cucullin! Do I put Cucullin in S+? Do I do it? Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I think Cucullin is so stupid. Actually, S+, I'll put him in S. I'll put him in S. Because, like, they just made it so that his level 1 transformation is not nearly as good. I mean, it's really strong. Like, he's got, what, 3 abilities? That's better than any stance switcher. I mean, unless you count their stance switch. He's got 3 abilities level 1, which is really strong, but, like, it's not, what, 4 abilities level 1 like it used to be, so it's good. He's still really good, but just, like, maybe not as good as Achilles in my opinion. I think that Achilles provides a bit more aggression than Cucullin. I might be wrong. I haven't seen the matchup much because, you know, they're both permabanned, so, like, I mean, Cucullin's not permabanned, but Achilles is, so I'm gonna have to say, just purely off that statistic, Achilles is better than Cucullin. Maybe that's just because it's harder to counter Achilles because he's newer. But right now, I think that Achilles just performs way better than Cucullin in most regards. Like, in support, he performs better. In jungle, he performs better. I mean, Cucullin's not played in jungle. But in solo, he also performs better, so there's that. Cupid, another ability-based hunter in A tier. I know, right? His clear is kind of bad. Like, I don't know if you guys played Cupid yet, and, like, try to clear wave, like, 1 wave. It's pretty brutal, man. It hurts. It feels bad. For being an ability-based hunter and not having clear, that's a fat Ella, if I do say so myself. His team fight's good, though, with that ultimate. You can just drop it on the enemy team and just kind of watch them die. So, like, there's that to take into consideration. But besides that, like, he doesn't have much. He's got CC. He's got damage. Really lacks that lane clear. I think that's what's holding him back right now. But we shall see. Ability-based hunters are seeing a resurgence right now. Especially with Transcendence and Crusher being, like, as strong as they are. Daji. Oh, God. This character, man. Oh, no. Oh, no. I had to mute my mic to cough, and I was like, ooh, this character is so stupid. You know when I said potency, and, like, the lower the effort to achieve said potency is better? Daji needs no effort to achieve maximum potency. That's the hardest thing you need on Daji is to hit her ultimate. Like, that's it. Like, that's the hardest thing you have to do on her. She is so strong. Her burst is nearly unparalleled to any other assassin. Like, barely any other assassin can match her in burst. Her chase down potential is really good as well with her 2, her 3, you know, her haste on her 1, her ultimate giving her basically a leap. She has, I mean, all assassins get blinked now to initiate, so, you know, her chase down potential is really strong. CC, that ultimate is basically a Ares ult, but better. I mean, better, I think I'd argue it's better than Ares ult. It doesn't put her in risk like it doesn't Ares. Also, by the way, Daji is really hard to kill because she's really safe. She's got a lot of safety in her kit. That ultimate makes her untargetable for a good amount of time. 7 seconds, I think. That's pretty good. Her 2 gives her damage reduction and movement speed, so, you know, there's that as well. Her 3 allows her to just teleport away and, like, not deal with anything. You know, there's just a lot of safety in that. She did recently get nerfed, but I don't think hard enough because, like, her 1, her 2, her 3, her 4, they all just do way too much damage. She literally is all-game assassin. She's an all-game assassin. She has no weak point during the game, aside from maybe level 1. Her level 1 may be the only time in the game where you can catch her and say, maybe this god isn't the best. But besides the level 1, her kit really just really just makes her the best jungler in the game, in my opinion. Even now, even after the nerfs, she's still the best jungler in the game. Next up is Discordia. Discordia did recently hit some few nerfs, but I think she's still a really high tier mage, similar to Agni. She's not going to be banned out ever, really, I don't think. But she still has that crowd control that really should be something to be afraid of. That Golden Apple is really strong, and along with that Madness on her too, it can be really difficult fighting into a Discordia. The one drawback that she has is the fact that she's not the most safe god because of her 3. Her 3 doesn't give her too much, like, movement down the lane, and I think that because of that she can be caught out. But it's really hard with the amount of CC she has to really, truly lock her down. And because of that, I think she deserves her spot in S-. Erlong Shen, my boy, just got played by Midgardian Male, man. He got played by Midgardian Male. I don't know what's up with Hi-Rez. They just decided Midgardian Male, you know what? Let's just, like, destroy half the gods in this game. Erlong, probably the one that affected the most. He's, I think, one of the most basic attack-based warriors in the game. Without that toll, he was struggling a bit. Now, without Midgardian, he's going to struggle even more. It's going to be hard for this boy. He might come back, maybe in the jungle role. But in solo, you know, he kind of just gets poo-pooed on by most of the other top-tier solo laners. Or he's fighting into a Guardian, which he literally just can't do. He can't even bully a Guardian at this point. So, we'll have to see. But they did recently buff him in this patch, so maybe he'll come back in jungle. We'll see. Next is Fafnir, the god of glittering gold. I think that he's great. I think he's great because Soul is great, and Fafnir works really well with many of these magical ADCs just simply because of his Coerce. Coerce making it really good, really easy to shred objectives and gods alike. Not to mention his hammer is always as good as ever. His passive is always as good as ever. Just all these like abilities and like, especially that ultimate being able to reset cooldowns and also get more potent effects on his regular abilities is really good. I said really good a lot. I think that's just because Fafnir is really good and S- gone. Fenrir, not as good. Fenrir is A tier, maybe even worse. Depends on if there's an RDO in the game. If there's an RDO or Ganesh in the game, he drops to A-. If he's not into an RDO Ganesh, he's A. So I'll put her in A. I mean, he's like right in between. I'll put him in A- because I don't think he's that great. Fenrir really flourished when you could build Bruiser, and right now in Assassins you really don't, because you build full damage and just like one-shot people. Fenrir isn't that safe because his damage is like, especially his brutalized damage is like way over time. Like it takes a long time to get out. 1, 2, 3, 4 scratches, and then his damage is out, and that's his main damaging ability. Unlike Dodgy, which has a lot of her burst on her 1. I think that really hinders him. His second ability is not even a damaging ability, so he really has to rely on either his 1 or his 3 to do a lot of damage, and that's just not that beneficial. That also means he's using both of his escapes as damage. He can't blink in just 3 because he's losing out on a lot of damage there, and I think that also hurts him. There's just a lot of factors that hurt Fenrir right now, but I think the base meta itself just kind of doesn't favor him. Next up is Freya. You know Freya's magical, so you wouldn't expect the Midgardian buff to affect her a lot. It kind of does. She's a very basic attack-based mage. Like, you know, and by very, I mean, like, she only has basic attacks and an ultimate. So, when Hi-Rez decided that Midgardian, you know, needs to be this broken, she just decided, I'm not going to be a character anymore. I'm going to be an A tier. You can play her still, and you can do a lot of work. You just have to avoid hitting the tanks. If they're smart, they'll have Midgardian. And it's a pretty good item pickup right now. So, it's not going to be too hard to expect that tanks are going to be getting Midgardian and just hurting your dreams as Freya. Removing that haste effect, basically, and also reducing your attack speed so you can't get as many pulse, you know, damages off. So, yeah. Next up is Ganesh. I think Ganesh, in ranked at least, is an S tier god. Maybe not in competitive level play, he's not as highly valued, but in ranked in particular, this is mainly due to his ability to work with any level of skill. Matchmaking, they're trying to fix it, but it ain't perfect, so No matter what level of skill your team may be, Ganesh is able to confirm the kills and give it to his allies in hopes to make a better situation. His ultimate is, in my opinion, one of the better Guardian ultimates, being on a 75-second cooldown and having just a massive slow, as well as a protection reduction, as well as if you're really lucky or really skilled, I'm neither, a body blocking tool with the Dharmic pillars, like the pillar edges. He's got a lot of playing with that. You can play around with that really well. His ultimate's also good for objective secure. His silence, really, I don't think anyone underestimates this ability. It's one of the best in the game when it comes to just general disruption. A 1.8 second silence that's channeled, so basically no DR on that. Also provides protections for his team. His 1 is the only, like, quote-unquote lackluster ability. It's basically just a clear ability that does damage and increases your team's damage. So, you know, he's got a kit. He's got a solid kit. I think the passive really brings him up to the S tier. The passive and the ultimate really bring him up to the S tier, and the silence is just another great addition. And the silence is also good into the next god we're about to talk about, Geb. The reason being the silence counters the shield, so that you can't shield at the best time. Geb, now let's talk about Geb. Geb is all about that shield, and that shield is really strong. Really strong. It just completely negates the assassin's, like, basic efforts to burst down in the target. Being able to just shield the ally that's getting dove by an assassin is so useful, because it basically makes that assassin's time spent relatively worthless, depending on how much burst they do, of course. But that's really useful because assassins are usually single target focused. There are some exceptions, but most of the time they're single target, and if you just shut down the burst on that single target, they really will not have much and will have to back off. It's also a good tool to cleanse, and it's just in general a good ability. Not to mention he's got one of the better Guardian ultimates, being a giant AoE stun for 1.8 seconds or something. I think it's longer than that, but I think at max rank it's 1.8 seconds. I think that's just pretty good ability. I don't know. Especially for a Guardian. Geb, the only thing he lacks is early game lane clear and just early game in general. And I think that he's one of the few exceptions in the support role that can get away with having a pretty crappy early game. Next up is Guan Yu. Kind of not having the best time Season 5. I'm going to say it right here. Really struggles because, you know, Warrior's Blessing and multiple ticks. There's that, so he can't be playing in solo. I feel like he's a jungler right now, but, like, you know, assassins are just so strong. Why would you ever pick a Guan Yu if you could just pick a Dodgy, Nem, Serket? You know, those assassins. I think that Guan Yu, at some point, maybe when they nerf assassins, he might come back. But until that point, he's just kind of bad. He really needs some touch-ups because he really just doesn't have a home. And even with a home, he doesn't perform better than any other god in that home. So, just a bad god in general. Next up is Hachiman, the best hunter. Not ADC, the best hunter in the game, in my opinion. Or one of the best. Ullr is there with contention, but he's one of the best hunters in the game. His 2 allows him to box pretty well, does damage, as well as increasing his attack speed. His 1 gives him range, so not only can he poke you out before a boxing match, but he can also finish you off after a boxing match. But I think that's what his ult is there for. Unmissable cone of slow and ability to move in and out of a fight. This ultimate, I think, is one of the better repositioning ultimates, one of the better mobility ultimates. Gives him a lot of safety, especially with his 3 and ultimate. His dash and ultimate allows him to really be a safe hunter and really hard to gank as an assassin. So I think that because of that, he's considered one of the better hunters. And yeah, I'm going to put him in S tier. Hades, he's a god that, like, exists if he's ahead. If he's behind, Hades is one of the worst in the game. Like, you really just, like, can't use your ult. So, what are you going to do as Hades? You have your first 3 abilities, but then you can't use your first ability aggressively, otherwise you're dead. So you have one damaging ability, not that useful. But he does have one of the better CCs being a fear, but that is conditional whether or not you either A, hit a basic, or B, use your 1. And like I said before, using your 1 is really risky, especially when behind. He's basically a magical Odin with more CC, but worse ultimate. I prefer Odin more, especially late game. Next is Habois. I don't know if he's maintained his 97.5 pick ban rate in ranked, but I know he's been played in the SPL, and guess what? My man Homie Faye showed that Vomit Jungle hard counters this guy. But on a serious note, I think Habois is good. I think I might have overrated him a bit, because people are going to try to shut him down. Like, no matter what rank you are, you see Habois, you're like, yeah, dog, I'm not about to let that thing get to late game. But, I mean, it's going to be more apparent in higher levels of play than in lower levels of play. The thing about Habois is, no matter how much you try, no matter how much you shut him down, at some point he's going to reach that late game. It's just that if your mid laner or your mage is just doing more than he is until that point, you've already won. So Habois is a very snowball-y, like snowball focused character. It's just the reason he's so good is because he can just snowball really quickly. And even if he doesn't, he still has that back foot of being able to just really one-shot someone with his 4 ultimates. So, you know, love Habois. Next up is Hell. I think at this point we've moved past the fad where we play Hell support and say, hee hee, I'm playing Hell support. Now we play Hell and lose. So, there's that. I think that Hell... Ooh, I put her in A on accident. Whoops, A-. Hell's an A- god. She just doesn't do anything that, like, is really that beneficial. She heals. But, like, if she's in mid lane... Like, why would you play in mid lane? You're going to get dove by an assassin. You're going to get hard eaten, dude. You're going to be eaten alive as hell against an assassin. You have no self-peel. Besides your 2 in dark stance. You have no self-peel. And that's just... that's not okay. You're going to die. You're going to die. You're going to need to use that Aegis. You're going to need to use that beads because you're going to die. That's just how it goes to be a Hell. She has more mobility than some other gods, though, so we'll put her in A- for now. Next up is Hercules. I was referencing him earlier, saying he's better than Chalk. He's like in between. He's on the border of A+ and A. I'm going to put him in A for now. I think he has the potential to be an A+ god. Hercules' lane pressure is good. Once he reaches like level 2, when he can pull push for the wave. Level 1 is not all that, but you know, it's alright. It does the job. Level 3, when he gets the heal, is when he starts ramping up, and once he becomes unkillable, that's like the max point of Hercules. And then he falls off a bit when it comes to damage, but he still provides a lot of CC. So like, he's just one of those like really just lane bullies, you know, like he bullies you out and then does things. I think that role in particular is just better fit by Achilles, but Hercules still can be played and can be played very effectively. Not gonna lie. Next up is Hou Yi. Hou Yi is one of the better hunters in the game. Not the best, not at all, but he still has his place in the meta. He's just trying to get that sun, and he's just putting it on the battlefield. I think it's, what, 10 ticks and a slow. Just a big AoE ultimate that zones people out. What a wonderful thing. Really good in team fights because of this. I think he's better than Cupid as well. His Ricochet just does a lot of damage unexpectedly if you Ricochet. And especially if you're playing Hui, you probably should know about the Ricochets pretty nicely. Yeah, all in all, he's really good, and he's even better if you're skilled. If you know your Ricochets and you're good at landing them, he's one of the scariest gods to fight in the game. Next up is Hunbats. I think I'll put him in A+. His ultimate's super strong. The rest of his kit is like pretty mediocre. Like, it does damage. He has crit. I'm interested to see how Malice works on Hunbats, because like I think it might actually be pretty decent. We'll have to see on that, but I think Malice might be decent on Hunbats. And if it brings him out of A+ tier, then that'd be interesting. But as of right now, I think he's got a relatively average kit, so I think A+ is where you would go. But his ultimate really brings him out of A tier, you know. Isis got buffed, and it made her ultimate more impactful. I think Isis might be A plus because of this. Her self peel has always been one of the best in the game. Like, she's really able to self peel, and since assassins are diving you really hard as a mage, being able to self peel is super useful. Her ultimate now is even better for objective secures, and that's just cool. Her ult's also even better for damage and just in general trading, so that's also cool. Just a lot of factors that I think bring Isis out of this A tier rut that she's been in for quite a while. I remember the days when she was one of the best gods in the mid lane in Season 2, but those days are long gone, and Isis might be climbing back up a bit. We'll have to see. Izanami. I think that Izanami's got one thing going for her, and that's clear. Once she doesn't have that, you know, you got nothing going for you. Really, I mean, Soul is there, dude. Soul just outclasses every hunter so far that it's really just unfair to compare them. But Izanami is there. She's got a lot of clear, but, I mean, here's what I like to do. Little tip technique I pick up upgraded horrific. As a support player, I pick up upgraded horrific and just drop that on her level 1, and she can't really clear. I'm fairly certain that the slow and the, what's it called? The slow and the attack speed slow is independent. And just being able to do that, and since she heavily relies on basic attacks to clear, really hinders her clear, and it's really good. But like even still, even without that strat that I like to run every once in a while, I think just like being able to push her out because she doesn't have the best basics when it comes to trading, pre-wave can also hurt her a lot because she has to hit the whole wave with her basic attacks, meaning she has to be pretty close by. So her clear is only good if you don't get pressured out as Izanami. So she's like A tier because of this. Next up is Giannis. Giannis is, we'll just say really good. We'll just say really good, right? I think he's the best mage in the game right now. Right now, he's really the best mage in the game. Like, his mobility is unparalleled, unmatchable, really. He's got more mobility than most assassins in the game, to be honest. To be honest, haha. His 2 does, you know, like, I don't know, why does it do half my health? I don't know. But it does, and it's on an 8-second cooldown, so every 8 seconds he's going to be hitting that 2, and he's going to have a lot of CDR because he's Giannis, so it'll be more like a 6.2-second cooldown, and you're going to be hitting, like, half your health every 6.2 seconds, you know, just a lot of that. Not to mention his movement, his ability to just position around the map, you know, really just can't fight that unless you're Thoth, and we'll get to that god later. Next up is Jingwei. I think Jingwei is a discount Hachiman in the sense that she's safe. She's very safe. That tier 1 Devos buff will help her out a bit because, I mean, she really didn't build trans and didn't make too much use out of it. So being able to build Devos again is really helpful for her. I'm intrigued to see how good Jingwei players like utilize that passive. I think that defines a good Jingwei player, and I think that if utilized correctly, that passive is one of the best passives in the game. It really allows her to farm really well. She's got a lot. She's very safe, and I think that's the main reason I'm putting her in A+. Kali, you know, Bakasur Kali not having the best time. Midgardian male buff, main reason why Kali's an A-. Nothing else. She's a basic attack based character. Midgardian male completely shuts that down. Khepri. You know what's interesting? That Midgardian male buff indirectly buffed Khepri. Why, you might ask? Because Khepri's 1 leaves him susceptible to basic attacks. Midgardian male hurts basic attacks. Khepri is better. How much better? Probably not that much. I think he's an A+ god. Like, you can play him and do well with him. I think that Khepri's ultimate is always going to be one of the better Guardian support ultimates in the game. Just being able to undo any damage that's been done on your carries is really helpful, especially in a meta where assassins are just hard committing on a certain character and just blowing them up. Being able to just ult that and completely undo all of that is super helpful. His 2 also gives damage reduction, so just further proves that he's a backline support. His 1 and 3 are good CCs, both relatively single target. His 3 not so much, but his 1 definitely single target, definitely built for like either locking down a single carry or being able to peel away a certain character. So yeah. Next is Cuckoo. He's a god that farms a lot. He drops his tornado, goes back to tower. Drops his tornado, goes back to tower. That's really the Cuckoo gameplay. And if you're good at farming outside of just dropping tornadoes on each wave, you'll be pretty good when it comes to farming. Ult does a lot of damage, and more jungle fights are happening. And since there's a lot of like tight corridors, just firing your ultimate down one of those is you can do a lot of damage with that. Thing he lacks, like most other mages, is mobility. However, that 2 kind of makes up for it. At max rank, it gives 80% movement speed that decays over time, but it's still 80%. And I think that's still very important when it comes to positioning as Cuckoo. And because of that, it gives him a slight edge in battle against some of these other non-mobile mages. Next is Kumbhakarn. He's interesting because I think he's bad, but not bad, you know? Like, he's bad, but, like, he might not be that bad. It just depends on how well you utilize your second ability in the pre-wave. That's what I'm going to call before the waves meet. I think that Kumba's 2-second route before the waves meet is super potent and can be taken advantage of very heavily. It's just that 2-second route is also really telegraphed and also really slow, so in higher levels of play it's going to be hard to catch anyone truly off with that too. But don't ever underestimate Kuma damage. It's pretty potent. I mean, like, people always talk about Bacchus or Ares when they think of Guardian damage. Kuma's up there. His ult does a lot of damage, and it's only on a 75-second cooldown, so epic uppercut B, fisting people, you know? Kuzenbo. Kuzenbo is another god that plays solo lane. I actually forgot he existed, but at the same time, he kind of soul quite nicely, actually. He just stands in the ultimate that Soul throws out with his 2 and Thorns and just kind of one-shots her. His ult is really good disruption. Not that great for setting up kills, though, like you would expect a Guardian to do, but he's more of a warrior nonetheless, so there's that. His lane clear's alright. His level 1 with his 3 is really scary to fight against, so there's that to take into consideration. All around a decent enough god. I don't think he's going to be too highly valued, but you can play him and you can have fun too. Loki's bad, so just don't play him, please. I just don't want Professor Loki or any Professor Loki followers in my game. Like, I just don't want it, man. I see a lot of people playing Loki ADC, and I agree that's the only lane only role he is even slightly viable in. But like, 9 people hate you when you play Loki. I don't think it's worth it. This tier list is all my opinion, so I don't care that this is really biased and probably not accurate. I know he's probably like an A- god, but I'm putting him in D tier. Next is Medusa. Medusa's an A tier god, I think. She's got the versatility of being both a basic attack mage, basic attack hunter, and an ability-based hunter. She's on the verge of being A+, I think. Her ultimate's really good when it comes to just boxing and stuff, so there's that. I think she does lack... What does she lack? She lacks, like, an ability to do either one well. Like, she isn't the best ability-based hunter, and she isn't the best basic attack-based hunter, so that versatility kind of hurting her in the long run, I'd say. But that ultimate's always really good. Her ability to reduce healing and box is also pretty good. You know, I think that she's all around a good character, just not the best. Mercury is decent. In the right hands, I think Mercury can do work, but normally I think that his early game is not all that, so the pressure he provides isn't that great either. Once he gets level 5, his pressure is a lot better, but pre-level 5, he doesn't have much of it. He has to rely on his teammates to, like, really catch up with the damage that he doesn't provide early game. Late game, though, he swings. He basically one-shots you with his basic attacks, and you're really sitting there like, wow, I wish I wasn't dead, but then you are. So he's one of those late game gods that really doesn't do much early game, so I'll put him in A tier for now. Najah. I think Najah has a lot of potential. And why? Because Malice changes. Malice, if you didn't know, now it received a new change. Another one, like 80th change to Malice, I think. But this one says that, what's it say? After critting, your ability to deal 35% bonus damage for, what, 2 seconds, 3 seconds? Something like that. Thing about that is, that's super effective with Najah ult, because if you're like, you know, if you can press left click a couple times, you will easily be able to activate the Malice passive, and because of that, you'll easily be able to do 35% bonus damage with Najah ult. So after the first hit, you're going to do 35% bonus damage with the second hit, the third hit, and the landing. I think that also does damage, so that's what, 70, that's 105% bonus damage. You know, that's pretty good, I think. That's pretty good, just like for an ultimate alone. Not to mention that after just critting with a basic attack, your other abilities will be doing 35% bonus damage too. And if you crit before using the ultimate, you'll do bonus damage on all three, which is just even more. Like, I think specifically on Najah, Malice is going to be super strong, and I think it's going to give him a lot of damage that people just don't normally expect. Next is Neith. You know, there's a lot of basic, like, ability-based hunters that just kind of don't compete with other ability-based hunters that are higher up. I think that Neith is alright. Ullr outclasses her in almost every way besides the global ult. I think that in specific comps, if you want that global ultimate, you'd pick her over Ullr. Or if you just want like an easier god, you'd pick Neith over Ullr. So there's that, but I'd say that Ullr performs better as an ADC, and as a mid, I think a stun is just better than a root, but Neith does have a good amount of burst, so it's hard to say. But, you know, I can definitely say that Ullr is the better god, especially in a 1v1. Ooh, next up is Nemesis. Nemesis is good. Her ultimate just like says, hey, you see this big tanky boy? Not tanky, kill him. And everyone's like, alright, and then the tank gets one shot. So Nemesis ult is really strong. Her early game is like good, not the best, but Assassin early game is all just like always going to be good. Like every Assassin has good, decent enough early game. Nem's comparison to like Dodgy isn't as good, but like it's pretty good. Like once she reaches like level 7, her ult 2 combo is really doing a lot of damage, and she can also basic attack cancel if she's decent with her shield and stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that Nemesis can do. She's really looking for those 1v1 trades because of her ultimate and her passive. She's able to do those really nicely, or just those quick gank with the ultimate and just like blow up the target and get out sort of ganks. In team fight, she's really good because she can really single out a certain target and make sure that they die really quickly. Next up is Nike. I think Nike is a god that's just like not as good as Amaterasu in both roles, in my opinion. Like when it comes to solo, I think even though Nike may have the better level 1 clear, Ama just has the better like transition into late game after laning. In support, you know, it's kind of a no-brainer that Ama has more CC than Nike, so you'd always pick Ama over Nike. I think that Nike's one advantage over Ama is that her aura is global, and because of that, it affects everyone on the map, and no matter where she is, unless she's dead. But besides that, she can always affect a fight with her passive, and I think that's pretty effective at just helping your team out. Next up is Nox. Nox is a very burst-heavy mage, not a very poke-heavy mage. I think she does have a lot of self-peel, and I think that'll... If there was a stat, and self-peel was a stat, I think that would be the one thing that pulls her out of A tier. because her self peel is really good. Just drop the silence on yourself, drop the root, and hope it hits. If it doesn't hit, you also have the dash into allies, for example, like a guardian, so that they're taking the damage instead of you. And if all else fails, you can drop your ultimate that reduces damage. You know, she's got a lot of tools to peel for herself. I just think that her over-reliance on landing a full combo to do damage hurts, because certain other gods like Agni, like Discordia, like Thoth, like Cabal can just throw out an ability and kind of just do damage to that. And you don't expect CC to set it up, you know? Next up is Nuwa. Soul Gem Nuwa is kind of strong. I think that she's still a little bit overrated. Her aggression is not all that. Like, she can't really, like, press up as a Nuwa. Like, you can't aggress too hard. You can counter engage really hard. I think she's got one of the best self peels in the game. Against assassins in particular, just dropping the clay soldiers, dropping the fog, dropping the shining metal, stunning the assassin, and just like walking away through your fog is really useful. I think that she's overrated because she has to play really passively most of the time, and that ultimate is really strong since it's global and gives you vision and does damage to everyone, and with Soul Gem procs, it's really strong. And I think that because of that, she carves her place in A+. Odin is the best counter pick to certain gods. Like, Odin counters healers really hard because none of them have a leap, I don't think. Yeah, none of the group team healers have a leap. Another thing that Odin does really well is just make sure to group up enemy teammates in like a certain area, so that sets up for your mages and your hunters to like blow them up because they're all corralled, especially if they have dash. And another thing that he's really good at is forcing opponents to buy Phantom Veil, which is basically a waste of a relic slot. So there's a lot of things that Odin does provide. The issue is that you don't want to first pick him because then you revealed you're playing Odin. So you have to pick like... So the enemy team will just pick like Ganesh, Hui, you know, like gods that can leap out of his cage and can just leave his cage. And also gods that benefit from his cage. So like they might pick, I don't know, what mage would they pick? Agni, I don't know. But like, you get the idea. It's just they'll pick the mage that either A, can leave the cage, or B, benefits the most from the cage. So there's that. But Odin's really good at punishing low mobility gods because of his ultimate. So he's definitely has his place as a counter pick. Osiris. He's not as good as he used to be for sure. His bully potential isn't nearly as good as Achilles or Cuchulainn. His general like sustain has been hit really hard with that death toll. His mitigation passive is still going to be super strong, so I think he still has a place in the meta because of his ability to just tank up a lot of hits. I think that his ultimate's really good into healer comps, similar to Odin, except Odin's is easier to land. Like, Osiris is interesting. I think that he's fallen off a bit since last season, and I think that's mainly due to Death Toll not being in the game. Next up is Poseidon. He's a mage. I think that I'll put him in A tier for now. He's a mage with a lot of utility and a lot of CC with Gem of Isolation. So he has item reliance on Gem of Iso, but once he gets that item online, it's really hard to deal with him. His movement speed is really strong with his passive and his 2. His capabilities to slow with his 2 and his 3 are really good. His CC on his 3 and his ultimate are really good. His burst on his ultimate and 1 are also really good. You know, he's got a lot of things, and I think sooner or later we're going to see Poseidon a lot more, but like, all these things on paper may not execute that well in real life. So yeah, another mage gonna be joining in the A tier, and so is Raijin. Let's talk about Ra first. Ra is a mage that has a lot of ranged damage and also has a good confirm in his ultimate, but a lot of mages are confirming the objectives nowadays. His sieging, I think, is really good, and actually I might put moving to A+ because of that. Ra has one of the best sieges in the game. Like, his ability to siege phoenixes is really good, and also his ability to counter sieges is really good. So all around, once he reaches that later stage of the game and people are starting to push Phoenixes, depending on what team he has, he might swing it in one side or another. And I think that's pretty powerful of a character to do. So that was almost English. Next is Rom. Rom, like every basic attack based god, is kind of been like, you know, why you gotta do that nice little mid guardian buff? And Hires gave it to Rom too, and Rom just kind of struggles a bit more now. This is mainly due to his heavy reliance on basic attacks. I don't know if you know this, but Rom's only ability that does ability damage is his ultimate. The rest of his kit is pure basic attack focused. And Midgardian Male, kind of, you know, just a little bit, kind of his basic attacks a little bit. So, really hard for Rom to do anything. Especially now that a lot of gods are going to be building it. Next is Rat. Rat is got global presence. Don't know exactly where to put him. He's not like a top tier jungler, but like he's the god. He's the jungler you'd pick after the primary junglers are banned. He's similar to an Agni in that sense, and because of that, I'm gonna put him in S-. His global presence is really just what sets him out different from other assassins. His ability to just like gank from across map, not across map, but like you get the idea. Gank from the jungle and just like show up from nowhere is really threatening. Not to mention, if his ult is down, he can still blink in and acorn you, spin you, and then just like dash in at you to get the kill, or just dash away if the burst didn't do enough damage. All around, just a good character, so I'm gonna put him in S-. Robin, I think a character I underrated immensely. I did not expect Robin jungle to be as strong as it is, and I should have realized, but Robin is one of the hardest counters to Dodgy. Dodgy has never really liked warrior jungles. She struggles with them quite a bit because they're tankier, so it's harder to just like, you know, exist upon them. But Robin kind of is that tankier warrior jungle. Not only that, but Robin just counters Dodgy really well with his overhead kick and his ultimate. His ultimate gives him damage reduction as well as a leap, so it's hard for Dodgy to teleport to it. If she's channeling the teleporting leaps away, she can't do it. If she teleports in on him and then he just leaps, she can't do the burst combo. It also makes him CC immune, so she can't ult it. The damage reduction affects all of the ticks and everything, so Robin's ultimate alone just hard counters Dodgy's kit. But then you will have to consider the 2, which also hard counters the kit, because if she leaps in and immediately basic ones, he can just immune all of that, and that's really potent because that just completely negates half of Dodgy's burst, and that's really devastating for an assassin. I don't know, I'm talking specifically Dodgy right now. I mean, this works for most assassins, but like Dodgy in particular, I think, because overhead kick just completely negates the chains as well. It's practically impossible to pull a Robin as Dodgy unless you know both of his cooldowns are down, and even still, it's really hard. And since he's tankier too, because he is a warrior, it's kind of brutal. Also, he, for whatever reason, despite him being a warrior and being relatively tanky, he can still build full damage and one-shot you, and not many players like appreciate that. When you get blinked by a Robin, you're basically dead. He just drops his kit and you're gone, sonny boy. Next up is Scylla. She's a god, has a lot of damage, predictable escape. Assassins punish predictable escape, but I use my teamfight ult late game, get a pentakill, end the game, or don't. Depends on if I'm accurate and I get the kill. If I get the resets, you know, really relying on that in teamfights. But her 2 is really good, just like easy damage. Like, it's really hard to miss Scylla 2. I'd be impressed if you miss Scylla 2. So, yeah. She's a god with a lot of damage. Decent enough. I just think that her early game is lacking, and her escape is way too punishable by assassins. Next is Serket. One of those assassins that's like really good, you know. Just, I don't know, like maybe it's because, you know, Serket can build basically full tank and still do true damage. That might be it. Or maybe it's because, you know, Serket's taunt is really good. Or maybe it's because Serket's 1 can crit. Or maybe it's because she has 2 mobility. Well, 2 abilities that give her mobility. You know, there's a lot of aspects of Serket that just, you know, make her one of the top tier junglers. And I think that this is, like, well known by now in the Smite community, that she's one of the best junglers in the game. Next is Scotty. You know, I actually, like, I'm glad I'm not seeing Scotty because I don't like the god. But, like, on a serious note, he kind of struggles a bit. Now that there's 2 people in dual lane again, the dog dies quicker. Now that there's 2 people in dual lane again, the lack of mobility hurts her even more. And now that junglers are suppressing dual lane hard most of the time, it's even harder for Scotty to do anything because she's usually behind, and she also doesn't have that much mobility, so really just not the greatest for her right now. Sobek is rising, my man. He is playing multiple roles. He can solo, he can support. He's a pretty good pickup in both, actually. I might even put him in S-. Let me think about this. For now, I'll put him in A+, but he might even be an S- god just because of how well he plays both roles, solo and support. His ability to play solo is just, like, not win the lane, but just endure through, like, an aggressive lane and just kind of bring more to a team fight. His support is just setting up those kills through pluck, especially early on. Just being able to, like, pick off a single target character. And also, he has a good matchup into Sylvanas, like, in particular. That's just something to take into consideration. I don't know what the change on his 1 was about. That's a really weird one. Like, I knew he was intangible during that pluck animation. Now he's just CC immune. It's weird. Like, I don't think it really affects him too much. But, hey, I might be wrong. Sobek mains tell me, but I think that wasn't too big of a nerf. I think that was more of a tweak more than anything. Next up is this god I've been hyping so much. Yep. Yeah, and there's a reason for that. My voice is running out. Jesus. Soul is the best ADC in the game. Try boxing a Soul with full passive. You simply can't. Try boxing Soul with full passive in Bancrofts. You actually can't. Try catching Soul when her 3 is up. You just can't. You know, Soul's so safe, but her boxing potential is unmatchable. Like, you can't match that boxing potential. Her 2 is good at both poke and clear, as well as a decent enough lockdown tool to, like, slow opponents just enough for their basics to connect so that she can get more passive stacks and just kind of wreck house. Her ultimate is really good at securing objectives, also pretty good at boxing because of the knock-up effect, and good at self-peel, again, for the knock-up. She's got so much that it's really hard to beat a Soul in lane and in boxing matches. The only time you can maybe beat her is if she's bad. But other than that, Soul's really dominant right now. Sun Wukong. He's an aggression-based Soul laner that just doesn't do the aggression nearly as well as Kokolin or Achilles. 1 second. Kokolin and Achilles just have simply better aggression than Sun Wukong does. And because of that, I think he's only an A tier god. Glad Shield also isn't that great. He really loved the Glad Shield meta Season 4. But Season 5, it hasn't been nearly as much Glad Shield focus. So Sun Wukong can't make use out of that item. One of his best items. So now he's just an A tier god. Next is Susanoo. Oh, he's also another one of those junglers that you kind of pick once the trifecta of really strong junglers has been picked. Like, you can pick him for, like, early aggression. You can also pick him for quick rotations and, like, just heavy impact rotations. Like, when a Susanoo rotates to your lane, it's really impactful. That ultimate big knock-up, that 2 small knock-up, the chase potential on his 3 and 1 is also there. Burst potential on his 1 is there. The only thing that I think that holds Susanoo back is the fact that his 1 is his main damaging ability, damaging ability, and also takes a good amount of time to execute. So like you have to go through 3 phases to get the full damage, and depending on whether or not you dash in or out, you might not even do the full damage. So yeah. Next is Sylvanas. Sylvanas is good. I don't think he's Ganesh good, but he's good. The reason I don't think he's that good is because he's got really bad matchups into like Serket in particular. When I look at Serket, I think that Sylvanas loses. I also think he loses to Nemesis quite handily. Ganesh is another god he loses to pretty badly. Sobek is, I think, his worst matchup, especially in the support role. He really just can't beat Sobek very nicely. So he's got some bad matchups, but his clear is the best Guardian clear in the game. Whoa. He's got the best Guardian clear in the game. I was going to say maybe Krabraken, but nah. So Sylvanas just has the best. His pre-level 1 is also really good with Verdant Growth. Being able to root an opponent and allow your ADC to basic attack an opponent with reduced protections is just super good for the pre-level 1 poke. His poke is nice like pre-level 1 because, or like the pre-wave poke. His clear is always going to be phenomenal, so yeah. Terra. The thing about Terra is like she's really highly valued in SPL, and I know it's because like not only can she play multiple roles, but her ultimate's really powerful. But I think that in ranked, she's not as good because it's harder to coordinate a full-on assault with that ultimate. I think she's still really good in certain situations, but I don't think she's like one of the highly contested gods like the SPL shows it out to be. I think she's more of a A-tier god until you reach that high level of play, and then she's like S-, you know? So like as you rise in the ranks, you also rise Terra in the ranks, so there's that to take into consideration. Next up is Thanatos. I'm going to rank him below Camazotz, even though, in my opinion, Thanatos is better than Camazotz. He's got an execute, always going to be relevant because of that. If he's not just relying on the execute, that means he's snowballing, which is just scary. A snowballing Thanatos really just ruins your day if you're on the enemy team. It's just like brutal to get scythed, and you just cry really once you get hit by that scythe. You really can't do much. The scythe does a lot. The silence does a lot. His 2 allows him to just maneuver around the map really nicely. All around, his kit's just good. He lacks like a hard escape though, so I think maybe that's why people prefer Camazotz over the Thana. But in my opinion, Thanatos is able to stay relevant no matter whether he's ahead or behind, and I think that's a really valuable aspect of him. The Morrigan can be played in multiple roles. Mid lane is probably the preferred role, and the ability to transform into any of these gods makes her really good. She's very versatile because of this. Not only that, but her just basic kit without her ultimate's pretty versatile as well. Being able to use the one as both an initiation tool as well as a peeling tool is really useful. Her 2 is just good poke as well as good burst, so she's got both in that. Her 3 is a decent enough escape, not the best escape, but it's decent enough. And it also can be used to play some mind games, and that's always useful. But I think that ultimate is really what everyone thinks about when they think Morgan. They think of the ability to transform into any god and just shift a team fight through one way or another. And I think that's really cool. And I also think that A+ reflects that, because she still has like that issue where early game is not the best, so. And also Hunter's Blessing no longer works on her. Next up is Thor. Thor is, like, in my opinion, worse Ratatosker, just because, like, Ratatosker versus Thor late game, I'd say Thor wins because of his higher CC and more easily confirmed CC, but Rat doesn't have to sacrifice his dash to do a lot of damage, while Thor has to sacrifice his teleport hammer to do the main crux of his burst damage. I think that hurts Thor a bit. I think that knockups are just in general better than stuns, so there's that to take into consideration. I don't know which ult is easier to land, Thor or Rat ult. I don't play either of them too often, but I think Rat ult, since you can reposition it multiple times, it might be a little bit easier. Also, you can bait out beads with it too, so there's that. But I'd say that Thor and Rat are similar gods, and they fill a very similar niche. But I think Rat just does it better. That's why Thor's only an A plus and not S minus. Next up is Thoth, the god of thief. Thoth is the only mage, in my opinion, that can compete with Giannis currently. Way too safe. Like, that dash is really long, and it's really hard to punish a Thoth. Like, in any position. He can be at your tower line, and you can still barely punish him if your jungler ganks. He just drops his wall and dashes backwards, drops another wall, and throws the stun out, catches you, and you'd be the one to die in that scenario if it's late game. Because that dash is just really long. I think it's a bit too long. Or maybe it's the stun that's a bit too long, because the stun exists, and it really should not on an artillery mage. But since it does, it puts him in the highest level of maginess, you know. He's really good at poking from a long range and being able to just poke and prod at the opponents until he's able to get an opening and then just burst them down with his final judgment. So that's Thoth for you. Next up is Tyr. Tyr is a god. I don't think he's like broken. He's also not that like desirable. Like, he can be played, and he does things in the lane that he is currently being played in, but like, he doesn't really bring too much to the table. He's like a better chalk, I'd say. And he also he has mobility though, so he's a way better chalk. Next up is Ullr. Ullr is the god that's getting axed and then just half your health disappearing because of it is just I think he's definitely more of a mid laner right now than a hunter, just because mages, or specifically Soul, rule that lane. But even in the dual lane, he can put in work. His axe can be body blocked by the support though, so there's a little bit iffy there. However, he still can burst the support down, so no problem, easy peasy. Him and Hachiman are competing to be the best hunter in the game. I'd say it's Hachiman, just simply because it's easier to perform. Well, how should I say this? It's easier to be potent as Hachiman than as Ullr, because you have to be pretty quick with Ullr to be potent with him, whereas Hachiman, you just kind of have to play the ADC role mediocrely to be relatively potent with him. I think because of that, Hachiman has a slight edge. Not only that, but Hachiman's safer because of his ultimate. Ullr is relatively safe with his leap and 2, but I'd say that since he does lack that ultimate, he does have a lot to be desired in that 4th slot. And sometimes assassins can just get the better of him because of it. Next up is Vomit. I know Homie made this character look broken. Trust me, he's not. He specifically counters Habois and like low mobility gods, because especially the way Homie built it. He built like all movement speed and just kind of like rushed them down. Vomit doesn't work that well. He works in those calm-based games where, like, they have a specific counterplay in. Vomit just on his own in, like, a ranked game, not the best. Like, he can be played, but, like, Serket, in particular, is the god I look at to counter Vomit. Just, like, drop the ult on Big Baby, and he's a big target that also just doesn't have healing and is taking true damage, you know. Really just hard for Vomit to find a place in the meta right now, I think, just because, like, in solo, it's hard to be like a clear heavy solo laner while without like too much bully potential. So, you know, I think it's just hard for Vomit to compete with, you know, Achilles and Kokolin. Well, Vulcan recently did get buffed, and I think because of that, he's an A+ god. His 1 is on a 5-second cooldown. I don't know if many people know that, but that's like similar. That's like 2 seconds more than Habois, but it also allows him to reposition every time he uses it. His Inferno Cannon is going to be doing more damage now too. Also, I don't know what they buffed about his 3 or 1. Something else got buffed, but I don't remember. Whatever the case, his 3 is also a knock-up. He's very similar to Habois. I'd say he's a discount Habois in many ways. Habois' second ability being a lot better than Vulcan's, but that's besides the point. Vulcan's ult is really good at securing objectives. It's also surprisingly good at stealing objectives, Damage is something it does have. However, it is relatively slow fire time, so it can be easily avoided if the opponent knows it's coming. If the opponent either A, doesn't know it's coming and somehow just like gets caught out, or B, gets CC'd into it, it can be devastating. And I think because of that, Vulcan's in A+. Next is Xbalanque, A tier god. He does things that a hunter can do. I feel as though I feel that, I don't know, I might be the only one, but I think Xbalanque has a good matchup into Soul because he doesn't actually have to get too close when using his ultimate. When using his ultimate, his basics do reach a range of 85 or something of the sword. And because of that, he can outrange Soul and not have to deal with the passive at all. That could be interesting counterplay. The 2, just in general, I mean, in my opinion, Xbalanque has the best matchup, but that's because of his 1 and ultimate. I don't know for sure. I haven't tested that theory yet, but like, Xbalanque can do things. He has got good and bad matchups. His ultimate's really annoying. Like, it may not be the best ultimate, but it's super annoying to fight against. Like, just like not being able to see is always just annoying. So, I don't know. I'll just put Xbalanque in A. Enough rambling. Next up is Jing Chen. I think he's an A tier god as well. I think Kerberos at this point outclasses Jing Chen. The aggression out of Kerberos is a lot better. But Jing Chen still has a place on his own. His 8-year-long ultimate can do things if you catch people with a blink or just people who don't have escapes and no beads. His 1 does reduce damage from basic attacks, so that can be very useful. Synergizes very well with Midgardian, surprisingly enough. His 2 is just a big old knock-up root. Just a tiny, teensy-weensy bit counterproductive because the knockup provides a diminishing return stack despite not being affected, while the root that does get affected by said diminishing return that you set up with the knockup. So, you know, just a thing to keep in mind there. But that's besides the point. His kit is good, and his sustain from his passive is also good. I think that Jing Chen has a spot in the meta, just maybe not as much as Kerberos does, you know? Ymir, similar, but different at the same time. Ymir also has a spot in the meta, but not as much as some other gods, specifically because he has no mobility. And he's really easy to catch out because he also has like no self-heal, like Sylvanas. His passive also doesn't like have a chance to root like Sylvanas. His ultimate is not nearly as good as like some other Guardian ultimates. And just in general, it's a lot harder to peel like an assassin off of you as Ymir than even as Sylvanas, because at least as Sylvanas you have a knock-up, you have a root, your passive maybe can come in clutch. You know, there's just a lot of options for that. Ymir just doesn't have that many options. He can wall off, but if he's slowed, that doesn't work. He can try to 360 freeze, 180 freeze, but that's really hard because it's a cone, and if they're close by, cones are really hard to hit. You can press 2, but that roots you in place, you know. Just a lot of options, but very few of them are safe or just good in general. Next up is Zeus. Very immobile mage, but if he gets ahead, he's staying ahead. That's the thing with Zeus. The issue is, like I said before, very low mobility, very, very low mobility, and because of that, it's really easy for like a Dodgy and Nem Serket just to like walk at him, dive him with a blink, and then just kill him immediately. So I think that Zeus is decent, just not that great, you know, not the best. Zhang Kui is, I think Zhang is actually underrated right now. He's really, he can snowball really hard. He's also pretty tanky when he's got full passive stacks, and not to mention his ultimate is just one of the best teamfight ultimates in the game. If you have Gem of Isolation on that boy, you're slowing an entire team with that ultimate, and that's pretty useful in a team fight. So I think that Zhang Kui does have his place in the meta, just maybe not as much as, you know, Thoth, because, you know, it's Thoth or Giannis, some of the safest, best mages in the game, but hey, what are you going to do? So, like I stated before, this is, first of all, my opinion, so if you disagree, please tell me. I would love to have a conversation with you in the comments down below. Tell me what you guys think. Also, tell me what gods you think need a buff or nerf. Tell me what might need to change for certain characters that are, like, either high up or low down, you know? what needs to change for the game to be more balanced, you know? But that right there is the tier list. I think that this is a pretty accurate representation of 5.5. This is nowhere correct, nowhere near correct. I'm not claiming this to be the correct tier list, the tier list that you should follow, but I like it the way it is right now. You guys are free to prove me wrong, but I'm tired. I'm also losing my voice. I think it's a good time to end this video. I hope to see y'all next time. Bye-bye.